and the Nilo-Saharans from Sudan.
Sudan is the largest country in Africa and roughly 1/4 the size of the United States.
The haplogroup A frequencies of the Dinka is 62%.
We're gathered here to celebrate the launch of our new book on the Dinka, the legendary cattle keepers of Sudan.
Let me give y'all a quick breakdown of something that just came out about a year ago. About a year and a half ago, some scientists found out that the Sahara Desert used to do a flip from being wet to a desert about every 20,000 years, about 17,000 years. It would flip, all right? They dug into the ground over there and found out that they could time this flip, right? Through what they call core samples into the ground. They could tell when it was filled with water, then they could tell when the sand gradually went over.
But I think what's quite perceptive in his observations, and I'll talk about that more in just a second, and more recently by David Wengrow, based on some really innovative archaeological research in the Northern Sahara.
They found out that the last time it was supposed to do this flip, somebody stopped it from doing the flip. Somebody stopped the whole Sahara Desert, which is bigger than the whole United States, from flipping and turning into a desert for almost 1,000 years. So these scientists was trying to find out, well, how did this happen? Who did it, right? They found out that it was human beings.
This happens because people who live in a single climate survive by farming and hunting the same foods, experience the same hardships, and therefore live very similar lives. This allows them to interact with each other, forming a common language and systems of interaction like trade and defense from outsiders. They develop the same lifestyle and end up sharing a common culture without even trying. In short, climate unites people through culture.
The proposed Nilo-Saharan unity would date to the Upper Paleolithic, about 15,000 years ago.
By taking cows, they would use the cows to revive the soil and make the soil moist and able to hold water. This is something that nobody had done those other many times it had done. This corresponds with exactly the time when Africans domesticated cows.
Most researchers thought the first domesticated cattle in Africa arrived from the Near East, perhaps as early as 7,800 years ago. But in the 1980s, a few archaeologists began to argue that the inhabitants of northeastern Africa had domesticated cattle independently some 10,000 years ago.
However, there are some that suggest there may have been a third domestication event on the African continent. Either way, Sangha cattle is the collective name given to the indigenous cattle of sub-Saharan Africa, all of which have played an important role in local culture for many thousands of years. Pastoralism is defined as the practice of herding as the primary economic activity of a society.
Bos Taurus africanus. This cattle originated in East Africa, probably the western shore of Lake Victoria, and have spread down the River Nile northwards, with depictions on ancient Egypt murals. So the paintings in the ancient Egypt tombs, you'd see Sangha cattle.
We domesticated cows, and somebody figured out that if you want the Sahara Desert not to turn into a desert, while we get ready to do something else, which I think was create ancient Kemet.
Ancient Egyptian cattle culture spawned new ideas in Kemet, while the society was going through formative changes.
Somebody organized this. They organized this. So what did they use? They used extraordinary organization of cows. They had to organize millions of people to do this. Millions of herders. They had to tell these herders, go to this oasis, take the cows over here, let the beetles dig the cow dung into the ground, so when the rains come, the rains can penetrate and we can keep our thing going up here, right? Somebody had to do that all over. So, what culture is it in the world that the cows is like the most prominent thing in that culture?
In the satirical letter of Hori, we see Wenjut used to say a particular people group. I will be buried with among my group in the mountain of the Holy Land of Abydos. It is clear to see that people and cattle were metaphorically symbolic of one another. In the case of Kemet, we should understand the black people of the land to be metaphorically equated to the divine black herd, Kemet. The king of this divine herd is often called the Bull of Bulls, and he is adorned with a symbolic bull's tail which encapsulates this divine bovine metaphor.
The pastoral lifestyle that characterized the later part of this period survives in modern southern Nilotic groups like the Dinka, reflected in ritual practices like the cattle dance. A similar pose can be seen in this early Egyptian figurine and a rock art panel that we found in our expedition to Sudanese Nubia. As early as 1948, renowned Egyptologist Henry Frankfurt argued that rather than looking to Near Eastern institutions and cultures to understand ancient Egypt, one should look to other African cultures that potentially share common roots in a regional cultural complex that included cattle-pastoralism, seen dramatically in the symbolism surrounding kingship on the Narmer palette.
So here we have Narmer. Narmer looks like a man, but if you look closely, he's an image of a bull. He has a bull tail, he has little bot, he has a bot kilt, and he has the knees of a bull. They're relating themselves, these ancient people are relating themselves to a particular stock of sacred animal, which is the black bull. I have a published paper in a journal. I was accepted. I wrote a 25-page paper on some of these problems
that continued throughout Egyptian history.
What culture in the world has the crook and the flail, which is the implements of herding? Why would the crook and the flail be the signs of the ancient Kemetic kingship? It could be anything. It could be a papyrus. It could be a scroll. It could be a tablet that the tablets that they wrote on. It could be all that stuff. Why was that? And why was the scarab there at the very start? And they called the scarab a regenerator. Brother, I just told you the great secret about how ancient Kemet came about. The people that we know of that started Kemetic culture, they the ones that did this. They the one that organized this. That's the reason why they went when they went and they started Kemet. They used the implements that they used to save the Sahara Desert. And what was they doing in the Sahara Desert? They were setting up Kemet. They were setting up a place for people to come to live because they knew it was drying up. So what are we talking about? We're talking about people that had extraordinary knowledge of nature, extraordinary what you call way past nation state organization skills. The Sahara Desert is bigger than any nation state, brother. Okay, somebody was organizing all through that, and then once it came time to create Kemet, they took the very implements that they utilized. There was a symbol of their authority. Those are the crook and flails is a symbol of their authority. But where does that come from? What gives them? Why is the crook and the flail their authority? Their authority is because they created what you call the foundation of what we call ancient Kemet. That's what they did. They created that. Now, what am I saying here? Here's where it gets to the self-domestication, my brothers and sisters. I outlined self-domestication. We domesticated a whole continent.
$1 billion ambition.